Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio. We're at big old number 20 now. He also has a radio show, and we're going to talk to him about the experiences that led him to not only know Bigfoot's real, but to be interested in doing a podcast-type show like this. And so without further ado, let me bring on the guest and creator of the CRYPTO P.T.S.D podcast, Mr. Dustin Duncan. Welcome aboard, Dustin.
Hey, Duke. Thanks for having me on. And real quick, a friend is, well, I definitely have to say you've been more than a friend, more like I always tell you, my forced mentor. But, yeah, man, I really appreciate all the help you've given me.
Yeah, just kind of think of me as the mountain man version of Yoda. You can call him up, and he might give you an answer, but he'll probably give you a smart-ass answer at the same time. So,
well, that's what I need. You know, I look at myself in our relationship as that kid that showed up after 21 years and said, "Hey, you're my dad. I need child support money." So, yeah, we're 18 years of that. I need all your knowledge.
Honestly, I don't mind doing this at all, especially for other people that have had some fairly harrowing encounters. I get contacted fairly regularly by people that have seen some pretty strange stuff, and part of the reason is because they've heard my encounter, and they go, "Oh my God, he's still like halfway sane and rational after seeing that. I probably should talk to him about what I saw." So I do get quite a bit of that, so it's no big deal, man. I'm here to try and help people out that have had to deal with this weird situation. There's not support groups available for this or anything, and although you're sort of doing one right now, so let's get back to what happened with you now. How did you come to find out that the Biggies were in fact a real thing? Did you have any awareness of them at all when you were a little kid, or?
I had a family member or two, growing up in the South or in Missouri, if you consider that the South, I do. But I'd heard the term boogers a few times growing up as a kid. And it's kind of funny, as a child, I had seen a fox that was very large and larger than any other fox. And I got made fun of for it. And I was talking to one of my great uncles one time, and I was riding in the truck with him. And, I was sad, and he asked me what was going on, and I told him, long story short, he told me that he's like, "Well, son, there's a lot of things out there that aren't known about. One time I saw a booger stacking cow patties on the edge of a pasture and walked off with it." And as a child, it's funny because after getting into all this, I think back and I remembered this. I'd forgotten about it totally, but I pictured like a green gooey monster off of Scooby-Doo, like an actual booger on the edge of a field stacking cow patties.
Freshly picked from a titan's nose or something, right?
That's what I truly thought he was talking about, because I don't know about other families, but in my family, children, when it comes to your elders, you don't speak unless spoken to.
Right.
And so I never asked.
You don't question very much, or it might be considered lipping off or back talking.
Yeah, and this uncle's pretty gentle, but he's one out of 10 brothers, and the way my grandpa and my other uncles are, I didn't want to look dumb, so I never asked. But it's funny that after all this happened, that's so yeah, I'd heard about it a few times, but I didn't know what that was. And other than that, growing up and probably in high school, I started seeing Finding Bigfoot, and after high school, and of course I watched it, but shortly it lost its entertainment value to me because it was just this never-ending hunt for something, and how they edit it. You think every episode they're going to get something, and they don't.
Yes, never-ending hunt for ratings. It's the ultimate cliffhanger. Will they find him next episode? Tune in again.
Yeah, and it just, that kind of turned me off. But no, it wasn't really in my frame of reference. I thought that Bigfoot could exist, but I thought his name was Bigfoot. There was one or two of them in the world, and they lived in Northern California or in the mountains somewhere, but there was only one or two. Like that was the thought I had in my head, but I didn't really think about it too much.
Right. So there was no connection whatsoever when you heard the word booger from your uncle and then Bigfoot, thinking that they might even remotely be the same thing. Thought never even occurred.
Yeah. Not at all.
Well, it makes sense to me. That's about what I would have done with it too, and we didn't have there was no awareness that those things were around the area I was living in from any of the locals, at least any of them that were willing to talk to me about it. And my family had moved into that area, after my mom and dad got married, so there wasn't like a long-term presence of my family members there to go back a generation or two and go, hey, there's just weird things out there. It just wasn't being done. But as far as I knew, having, grown up in that area and knowing all the neighborhood kids and stuff, they never said anything about it either. So I just think there just generally was no awareness in that area that those things were even there or that they existed.
Yeah, and there's actually, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I had a cousin. I have a very large family, and we're not Catholics, but we might as well be. I mean, I have a very large family. And so I had a distant cousin. He was quite a bit older than me, and he passed away young from a heart issue. But I had heard that he saw a Bigfoot out while he was sitting on a creek out in the middle of nowhere, because where we're from, I mean, it's just little spots of civilization and then just wilderness. But he was actually out there, and I think he was in high school at the time, and I think he was either drinking or maybe smoking pot or something, so nobody really took him serious. But he said that he saw one, and I didn't hear it from him, I don't think. I think it was his brother that ended up telling me about it. But yeah, other than that, I mean, it was never something that was real, and it was never something that was really here in Missouri, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, it totally does to me, too. I had a couple friends that had, seen the Patterson-Gimlin film and, went to school, and, we had a good-sized elementary school. When I got to high school, we had a graduating classes over 400 kids. I think we had over 1,800 kids in the school, and it was from an area about 30 miles, 40 miles across, so, a lot of kids there. So there was, of course, 2 or 3 that were interested in the subject, and we would talk about it occasionally, but even amongst them, there was, no concept that they could actually be living in Minnesota. That was, again, like you were saying, it was a Pacific Northwest, Northern California phenomenon. They're way over there in the big timber in the mountains somewhere, and we don't have to worry about that stuff. We just have to worry about being eaten by wolves. That's about it here, So yeah, I sort of had the same thing. There wasn't a whole lot of awareness or talk going on about it. It would have been helpful if there had been.
Yeah. I was just going to say that my family, all hunters, and, if something would have been out there, they would have told me about it. And even though my uncle said that to me one time as a kid, it didn't really register, but absolutely, there's zero talk about it. Nobody believes they're out there. It's something that you just don't even think about when you go out in the woods. The danger here in the part of Missouri that I'm from, we don't even have black bears in this part of Missouri. I've never seen one. I've never seen sign of one. I think there was a sighting in the area I lived in 50 years ago, but there was only one. So the only fear is people, and then mountain lions, which is extremely rare. I've seen bobcats, but that you're not really scared of a bobcat.
Nah. No, they don't usually get big or crabby enough to be. You could be more scared of a badger, actually. But yeah, I know what you're saying. You're pretty short on local predators there that potentially could be messing with you in the woods.
Absolutely. Yep.
So did you do quite a bit of hunting and stuff when you were a kid then, run around the woods a lot?
I did. I always joke and say the woods was my daycare, but I spent a lot of time out there. As a kid, in first grade, we moved back to my hometown of where my family's from, and we lived on a farm, and it had an apple orchard behind the house, and there it was a big house We didn't have cable, nothing like that. So it was, if you're bored, you get kicked out of the house. And during the day, you get kicked out of the house anyways. My mom was real big on cleaning, and we just played outside. You know, in the country, you have to make your own fun, make your own games, make your own toys. And with an apple orchard, and my grandpa had logs stacked up, we weren't supposed to play on them, but we did. You know, we were always outside, always doing stuff. I always wanted to be a hunter. I wanted to be like my grandpa, my uncles, you know, and be this great white hunter. That was the thing. I waged my own war on starlings, and you know, I was always running around with my BB gun shooting birds and cans and the neighbor's dog or whatever. I'd shoot anything and everything.
I can relate to that. We raised ducks and rabbits, so we had like this ready supply of food for them all the time, which all the local rodents really enjoyed and were trying to get into all the time. So we would set them up. Me and my brother both had Ruger 1022s with 4-power scopes, and we'd do our own little sniper massacre, and we'd just put a bunch of grain on the hillside down below the house and just leave it there all day long and wait until there was a big pile of them over there eating all at the same time. And we'd sneak up and put the rifle barrels through the fence. 3, 2, 1, open up on them and see how many of them we could take out before the rest of them scattered and got out of range.
Yep, so that's and even when I moved back, I'd gone out to my friend's house. I had my best friend lived in the country, and that's what we did out there. So, you know, that was fun. And the woods were never really a scary place. It has always been, you know, as I grew up and went out with my uncle and cousins, that grandfather that taught me how to hunt. It was my zen time, you know. During high school, I would go out with my 410, and I'd just go out by myself and hunt and have no worry in the world. And it was, I loved the woods. I loved hunting. I loved everything about it. You know, even if I didn't get anything, seeing a turkey or a deer while I'm out squirrel hunting is a win for me. Even if I come home empty-handed, just seeing the wildlife. You know, there were times I would sit down and I would just watch them. You know, I might see a squirrel, but I won't shoot if I've got deer out, because I'll just sit there and watch them. So I was definitely really into hunting, and, you know, not so much hiking, but hiking in the sense of walking around with a gun, yes, because sometimes I'd go out and really I wanted to go out for a hike, but I'd bring my 410 in case I saw a squirrel. So
it's interesting how much we have in common as far as the way we grew up, because same thing for me. I was out in the middle of nowhere, had a shooting range and a gravel pit right down the hill behind the house with powder magazine in it. We actually had a gun shop in the house that my dad was selling. He had his own gun dealership there. He was selling all kinds of firearms, lots of black powder stuff. It was a bicentennial, and it was just real interesting, you know. And one thing, we were out, of course, if we weren't hunting in the woods, we were like running around playing war or making shacks or undergrounds or, you know, hideouts, all kinds of stuff that we were doing. So we were like all over the woods exploring it. And it's interesting that until many years later, I never had any idea what it was I was looking at, but after I started seeing examples of it elsewhere, I just went, oh my God, these things were effing everywhere, all around where we were playing all the time. There were all these weird tree structures, and they were so obvious that even as a kid I couldn't blow it off. I'd just go like, that's not natural. How the hell did that get there? Somebody's making that. So our theory locally was that there was these kids from somewhere around the neighborhood that we didn't know that were running around back in our woods making these little weird structures, and we just for some reason never ran into them. And that was sort of what we used to mollify our own sense of curiosity about it, so we didn't get all freaked out. But now that I look back on it, I'm, you know, if I would have known what it was, I wouldn't have been in the woods at all. But you know, it's like you say, a lot of people, I've been hunting for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. I've never seen any sign of Bigfoot. But you don't know what to look for. once you know
Yeah.
what to look for, it's pretty easy to find sign of Bigfoot. In fact, sometimes it's scary how easy it is. It's disconcerting how close to town you can find signs sometimes and go, oh my God, what are they doing right here?
Yeah, you're absolutely right on that. And as a kid, something that we used to do that was probably my favorite thing outside of hunting. And, this started from before I was at the age where I could go out and hunt on my own. But we would go creeking, and we would just wade up the creek. And there's a sense, and I think every human being for a adventure. And when you're creeking, you go up to a bend, and we'd work our way to a certain bend. Well, you look just past it, and you wonder what's next. And so you just keep going and keep going. And, I remember getting in trouble from going too far. I remember one time his mom came, and she actually pulled up on the bridge, and we were like 4 miles from the house. And she had been looking for us for several hours because we didn't realize how far we had going up this creek. And now when I go back and I think about things, and as a kid, I don't, no structures pop out in my head that I remember saying, what was that? But there were always weird experiences. There was one at the farmhouse with the apple orchard with my dog that was weird, but it's easily chalked up to being nothing. But once your eyes get opened to seeing the sign that these creatures make, you can't stop seeing it. And you're absolutely right. It's scary. I use the analogy of, motorcycle accidents. People don't see what they're not looking for, but once you buy a motorcycle, you notice motorcycles everywhere because you're riding it, It's the same thing with, I've heard other people say, if you buy a certain car, well, all of a sudden you realize all these other cars that are just like yours that you would have never seen before. And it's the same thing.
Yeah, amongst the other multitude and plethora of brilliant things that he said, Dr. Bindernagel made one statement that I love to quote a lot, at least like regularly at this time. And that's it. For Bigfoot believers, for knowers, it's not so much a case of seeing is believing, it's believing is seeing. Because once you've seen one, you know they're real, and you start doing some research and finding out what kind of signs you can look for. They're going to tell you about their presence in your area. It's relatively easy to find signs of them. You start knowing where to look, and you go there and start looking for it. It's like, well, presto, there it is. But if you didn't know anything about them, you'd walk right past it and never have any idea.
Absolutely. I used to use a tree bow to get to my stand, my hunting stand. I used to walk underneath it. It was a landmarker for me, and I never questioned how that tree got like that.
Somebody else is using it for a marker, too. How ironic is that, huh?
Yeah. Yep.
Be like one of them finding a metal sign with an arrow on it out in the woods, not knowing what it is, and just go, well, remember this spot right here because this weird thing's here.
Yep. Absolutely.
Oh, my God. So, anyway, this went on for quite some time, and you were out in the woods a lot. So when did the whole thing actually come to a climax, and you became convinced without a shadow of a doubt?
Okay, so I kind of did what you did. I actually saw one. I didn't know what it was. I had nothing in my brain to put it to, no box to put it in, and I don't know if I blocked it out, but I just did not think about it. And we were having a lot of odd experiences around the property. I still didn't put it together. And then I went hunting with my cousin, got a deer, and had a gut pile stolen, and everything. It was like that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and everything came back, and I had to know what was going on. And so I went back home to St. Louis, and I started researching, and I started putting things together. and it kind of, seeing one, even for me, I didn't buy into it. I didn't fully understand what I saw. I can't explain how I didn't think about it and how I just kind of forgot about it, but I did. I don't know what mechanism that was. I don't know if I blocked it out. I don't know. But for about a year, until that gut pile got stolen, did I actually start figuring out what was going on.
Oh, my God. Well, like you said, sort of the same thing happened to me. Even on a worse scale, I didn't just, block it out. I completely forgot about it. It was suppressed memory until my friend Dave brought it up again about 2 years later, and then it would, boom, it all came back again. But, it's just so, especially if you're really into being in the woods, it's so jarring to your reality, and it's so threatening to everything that you like doing. It's just, easier for you to just go, I'm wrong, I'm crazy, I was just hallucinating, it was nothing. I'll just blow it off, nothing to worry about. Moving along, nothing to see here, folks. And that's basically what you're telling yourself, And I've had other, situations that I look back on now and go, yeah, that was probably Bigfoot related. And at the time, I was just going, probably nothing, and blowing it off like it was something completely different.
100%. And there's stuff that I remember back to, including my uncle saying he saw a booger, that after I dug into this and I started realizing I'm an idiot. There's so many things that I just explained away, impossible scenarios. Like if a buck stood on one hoof, jumped 3 times to the right, did a cartwheel, and then did this, that's what caused it. You know what I mean? I came up with these ridiculous scenarios to explain things, and I was okay with that. Yeah. But after that gut pile, we literally thought there was a large drunk guy running around our property at night, coming up. He wasn't taking anything, and he was talking outside the window. We'd all go outside, nothing. I mean, that we literally thought that. It was a large drunk guy. Large because of how deep the voice was, and drunk because it sounded like English, but you couldn't make out what he was saying. So I thought he was drunk. And it was, it's amazing if you're not thinking about something, how much stuff can happen. And on my show, I like having people on that haven't seen anything, that are having these types of encounters, because it's what happened to me, and I think it's what's happening to a lot of people out there. And if maybe they hear these stories like, oh, well, they haven't seen anything either, but they're having the same things I had, maybe it'll get them to look into it and start opening up their mind and their eyes a little bit to where they'll start seeing things.
Yeah, maybe save them a serious case of PTSD too. And that's part of the problem, because you can keep fooling yourself and telling yourself over and over again as these little odd and peculiar things happen over and over, and they add up, and you just keep blowing up going, yeah, it's nothing. It was, just a squirrel, or that was just an old branch on that tree that was getting ready to fall over there that snapped off and sounded like something just snapped a 6-inch branch. So that wasn't anything. And you can make up even more stupid excuses for it than the possibility that Bigfoot's doing it, just to convince yourself that there's nothing to it. And then at some point, you actually see one, and then it's like, oh crap, now I can't lie to myself anymore that there's nothing out here, because there it is right there. There's something out here.
Yep, and it flips your world upside down.
Well, tell us about your experience with that then, Dustin.
Okay. I'll start with the sighting that I had, and then I'll go into some of the stuff that happened around the property, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. Well, one night I was driving home. We have a long driveway, and if you take your left hand and you make an L shape with your index finger and your thumb, and you take the tip of your thumb and you point it up towards the tip of your index finger where it kind of makes a J or a hook shape. That's the shape of our driveway. And at the tip of your thumb is the house. And I was driving home one night. Every single night when I get down to the curve, I swing over to the side of the road. That way I can have a better view looking down the path. This path kind of keeps going straight off, and it ends up turning and leading into the east field. And every night I do this when it's dark out because there's coons or possums or foxes, deer, whatever. There's animals down there quite a bit. And so I'll stop and look at them, and then I'll pull in, and then if there's nothing, I'll go up there. But I hang over to the right because it allows me to have a better view, and at the last second, I turn. And so I'm doing this, and I see something dash across the path. So immediately I'm thinking deer. It looked too thick to be a deer, and its locomotion was smoother. I mean, it was just a flash, and I thought I saw like a glint of red, like eye shine, when it did that. And so, I'm slowing down to a stop, and I noticed to the right this reflective lights, and there's a semi-trailer over on the right side. This thing is moving up and down, and for a second, my mind is trying to say that it's the reflective tape off of the semi-trailer that's come loose, and it's flopping in the wind, and that's what I'm seeing. But I instantly know that's wrong because whatever this is it's looking at me, and it's looking across the path, and it's ducking and standing. So whenever it looks across the path, I can see that whatever this is has a flat face, and that the two reflective things that I'm seeing, they're shaped like eyes, they look like eyes, and as it turns, I can see the front of the face, and that it's flat. So it's obviously something, and it's standing and ducking and looking at me, looking across the path, and it's doing all of this, and it's kind of bobbing left and right a little bit as it's doing it. I've never seen anything move like this. Like small animals will move real jerky, but this thing was a very large animal, and whatever it was jerky, but smooth like a cat, and that's hard to explain, but it's the only way I can say it. It's almost like how a bird will move its head around. Right. It's like that, but seeing like imagine a bull doing that, moving in that way. It would look very odd. So this thing is doing this, and my brain is like trying to put together an outline, and the whole encounter here lasted probably 7 seconds, 5 to 7 seconds, which if you sit there and you count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 7 seconds is a long time. Like it's a short amount of time, but it's also a very long time. Okay. And at the last second, it's about midway in its up and down movement, and it stands up, and when it stands up, it squares up to me. And the whole time, it wasn't completely squared. It was kind of quartered to me, facing my left side. The path was on its right, my left, and it stands up and squares up to me. And when it does is the first time that I actually see its outline. And as soon as it squares up, it instantly shrinks back down and disappears. And I don't mean disappear like poof, it was gone. It went below the grass where I couldn't see it anymore. Mm-hmm. And I assume it went
drive or spider crawl, one or the other.
That's what I'm guessing. I don't know. All I know is that it didn't go across the path to the left because I would have seen it. To the right, there was a couple of pallets on the ground there, and it would have went over, or I don't know. This whole area is completely surrounded by 4 or 5 wire barbed wire fence. So it had to have went over it because of its thickness, but it could have done that behind the semi-trailer where I couldn't see it.
Right. Well, that's pretty creepy. What color was the eye shine that you were getting reflected back from the headlights?
So I had an '89 GMC pickup, and it had the old yellow headlights, but they're very bright.
Right.
The first thing that went across looked red. This one, when I first saw it, it was like a whitish yellow, kind of. That's why I was kind of thinking like the reflective. But as it was moving, it would go from, and I don't know if I've said this before, but it would go from a whitish or maybe a yellowish brown or an orangish brown to this whitish yellow. Like it was the same color, but it's like as it would turn and look back, it would darken and lighten the color of it. Like it would get a deeper color and then lighter, but it was kind of staying the same. And it was... It's hard to explain. I'm not very good at explaining color, but it was like a yellowish white to a brownish orange, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I mean, like with the one that I got to see in the dark conditions where you actually could get that sort of thing, it was getting reflection out of the corner of its eye off of the porch light. And I was like, what, almost 90 degrees off of where it was sitting, and I was pretty much in front of it. And from where I was sitting directly in front of it, that angled reflection off the light was making its eye shine look like kind of a lime green color. And that's why I thought it was somebody with like some, hip 1970s mirrored sunglasses on, sitting there in the middle of the driveway, because that's what it looked like. It had that same kind of reflective property you would get if you were standing there in the dark with a pair of reflective sunglasses on. That's pretty much what it looked like. But it was just like this kind of a light green color.
Well, I saw another one with my mom, and I'll tell that in a bit, but it was a completely different color, and it was 3 different colors the whole time.
So anyway, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that it probably is a couple different factors. One is the color and intensity of the light that's hitting it, and the second thing is the angle that you're looking at it from.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. In the other encounter that I had with my mom proves that, in my opinion. If what we were looking at was a Sasquatch, which I believe it was, it proves that because we argued about the eye color. But I'll tell that in a bit.
Yeah, so anyway, so now you saw this thing, it ducks down, it scampers off somewhere and hides off in the darkness. What was your impression at this point? I mean, it sounds like it was about as tall as the damn semi-trailer, so this must have been a big boy. I know my situation would have scared the crap out of me.
It wasn't as big as the semi-trailer, as in the top, but it was... And I've said different things because I don't want to sound crazy. It was at least 9 foot, if not bigger. And to be completely honest, I think it was probably closer to 10. Now, I don't know if it was standing on any of the pallets. I don't know exactly what else was back there other than the pallets. But its movement, I imagine that if it was standing on the pallets, because they can be kind of bouncy, that it wouldn't have been as fluid in its movement. It seemed like it was standing on something solid, so
right.
It could have just been the ground.
Weight. Yeah.
Yes, and the way that it was moving, if it was standing on something that had any movement to it, it would not have been as fluid as it was. But when it comes to the width, now I had a '89 GMC pickup. Actually, I'll be driving that tomorrow. I got to go pick up some stuff. But it was over half the width of the truck, probably closer to 3/4. And the one thing that my brain kind of stuck on was its shoulders, and I believe it's called your delt muscle, your delts. It's like if you put your hand on the part of your arm where you would get a shot in it, that muscle right there.
Yep, that's
was
your deltoid.
So big, and it looked odd, like it stuck out. It was shaped. It was like perfectly rounded and shaped like a basketball. And my eyes just kind of locked on that. The head was rounded. It was not any more conical than my head is. It was not a pointed. Didn't come to a point. It was round and very broad. It did have a big head, but the shoulders on it were massive. That's the only way to describe it. Like Wes Skirmer used to have on his intro, somebody say, it could have ripped the door off my truck and there's nothing I could have done about it. That's 100% the way I felt.
Yeah, people that haven't seen one of these things actually, and especially one of the bigger ones, you just can't appreciate how really scary they actually are, because most people get this kind of mental impression of, well, it's kind of like like a bodybuilder with like a furry suit on or something. No.
Yes and
it's
no.
It's kind of like the Incredible Hulk with a furry suit on.
Yes. When you see it, it's hard to describe. There's absolutely no way to prepare yourself. It reminds me a lot of compare it to more something along the lines of like a horse, a bull, or an elephant, because that's more along the lines of the size these things actually are. They're not like the little, human gorilla-sized critters. These things are huge. Yep. They're big. They're definitely not something to mess with.
Do not play games with Bigfoot. Do not hug the Wookiee. So
anyway,
after you saw Chewbacca take a powder there, what were you thinking at that point? Now you know the damn things are real and they're right there. What do you do?
I thought it was a monster. I didn't think about Bigfoot. I didn't think about anything. I thought that I saw a monster.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what it was. I just didn't know what it was. It's kind of hazy, the memories after seeing it. I remember being scared to get out of the truck. I know I got out of the truck, but I don't remember much after that. I don't remember if I went straight to bed, or if I sat in the living room, or if I sat in the bathroom and cried. I don't know. It just, after that, I didn't think about it until, and even having all the things happen around the property, I never linked it to that. Never thought it was that. That never once popped in my head until the gut pile got stolen.
And then there's so much shock that comes along with it, and the next thing that pops into your head is, oh my God, that reminds me of the time that this happened, which reminds me of the time that this happened, which reminds me of the time that this happened. And you're sitting there for like half a day going, oh my God, was that one of them this time? And just like second guessing pretty much everything that you've done in your life up to that point, anything that was peculiar out in the woods. And and it just freaks you out. It turns your world upside down. And, if you're in one of these situations where it's like right on the property where you live, or you get a really up-close look at just how huge one of these things are, I mean, it doesn't have to growl at you or throw a tree at you or anything. These things are friggin' scary. And they seem to be able to project fear just fine without having to do much of anything else in addition to just being there to do it. So, I think a lot of people that listen to these shows and people's encounters and stuff just don't have a clue about how scary some of these things are. Like, I can see a skeptic right now listening to your encounter going, oh, well, if it wasn't standing on the ground and it was standing on something to make it much taller when it was around there, well, like after it ran off, why didn't you just go over there to see if there was a pile of pallets there?
Huh.
That's the kind of question that a skeptic would ask, because they have no clue of what it's like to see a frickin' monster. Oh, yeah, I'm going to run toward the monster in the dark. What, are you crazy? Seriously. Think about what you're asking for a minute. And then don't ask it.
And so I knew that there was like 3 or 4 pallets over there because there's also a small tree, and it was in between the tree and the trailer. But I don't think it was on that. I'm just saying because of how tall it was. But you got to think there was something darted across the path. So now there's one on both sides of that path. And going down there was I honestly never thought about doing that.
Yeah.
That was not something I wanted to do. It was I got to get in the house alive.
Yeah,
and
let me just, reiterate that to everybody again. He's worried about getting in the house alive. He just saw a monster. He's not going to walk over to where he just saw the monster with his flashlight and take a picture of the ground. He's worried about not being dead. He doesn't know what he just saw. It's right frickin' there. He's going to go in the house and protect his own butt and be like logical and common sense guy instead of Joe Stupid. I'm going to go run off into the dark and follow the monster. Yeah, that always works out well in the horror movies. So, the point I'm trying to make here is, seriously, people, if you're going to be skeptical and you don't want to believe in this and you want to ask questions, put yourself in that position and think about it. If you just saw a 9 or 10 foot tall monster in the dark go darting off, would you walk over there and check it out? Hell no. Don't tell me you would, because I know you're lying. Don't even be lying like that. All right, Dustin, go back to it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That's absolutely. It wasn't a thought, and
No.
so
you're not thinking about that.
After
You're busy, grappling with the idea that monsters are now real. You're not worried about proving its reality to anybody else. You're freaking out.
Yeah, I knew I saw something there, and what I saw was real, and it was there because my mind was trying to say it's the flipping off the edge. Like, I was trying to create something else with what I was seeing, but I couldn't. And then at the end, whenever it stood up and squared up to me, and I saw the outline, it was just that moment right there. I don't know if I'll ever be any more scared. I don't. That moment right there changed my life, 100%. And it's hard to describe to somebody. Like, imagine you're weed eating in somebody's yard. Nothing's going on. Well, your weed eater runs out of string, so you shut it off. You pull your music out, your headphones out of your ears, and you turn around, and there's a male lion standing right behind you. How you feel in that moment is probably how I felt in that moment. It was totally unexpected. I was just driving home one night, and there's this thing that can kill me, and it's not very far away.
And it's not supposed to be real or exist, but it does.
Exactly. It's a feeling of I'm dead unless this thing decides not to kill me.
Mm-hmm. And for all you know, it's some kind of friggin' monster. And from what you've heard, monsters generally, encounters with them don't work out well. So that doesn't give you a whole lot of, margin for feeling a whole lot of hope in this situation. But it's going to be a friendly monster that's going to give you a hug. That's generally not what pops into your mind.
Exactly. And then after that, or do you have any more question on that? You want me to kind of move on to the other stuff that was going on the property?
Well, I just think that, that would be really a kind of a jarring encounter to have it happen right there on your property. I mean, the first time I saw one was about 3 miles from the house, which was too damn close to start with. But I was willing to stay out of the woods and have nothing to do with it again until one of them showed up right on the property, at which point I went, well, I can't avoid them. They're going to come up here and pester me, so now I got to find out about them. But, yeah, if you want to just continue on with the next thing that happened after that one, sure, go ahead.
Okay, so the rest of this is after the fact. So a couple of these might be out of order. It was literally all this stuff happened in between me seeing it and then the gut pile. This is everything that happened in between here. So at the time I worked at a sawmill, and I was the tie guy. I graded, cut, and stacked railroad ties all day. That's what I did. So when I got home, it was at this point in my life, I lived with my mom, and I was trying to get out of there. But when I got home, I would be dirty. I don't know if anybody's ever worked in a sawmill, but it's very hard work, and you get covered in sawdust and sweat. You can drink 2 gallons of water a day and not urinate. I mean, that's how much you sweat. I mean, it's a very physical job. But I would get home and I would be filthy. So my mom, of course, didn't want me sitting on the furniture. She wanted me to take a shower right off the bat. Well, I would be exhausted, and I would just want to kind of sit. So what I would do is I would go to the back patio, and I would sit there, and I'd watch YouTube videos or play games on my phone and smoke cigarettes. I smoked cigarettes at this time, and I would just sit there because I basically was trying to relax, and I knew when I went in I had to take a shower, and then I could sit on the furniture. So sometimes I would sit there, and it would get dark. And I wouldn't be paying attention because I'm smoking cigarettes and I'm playing on my phone. And this happened several times to the point where I started noticing it, and I didn't know. I just thought I was being a sissy. But I'd be sitting there, and it would be dark, pitch black, and all of a sudden, I'm literally sucked into my phone, whatever I'm doing, watching YouTube, Netflix, whatever I'm watching on my phone. And it's like all of a sudden, I have this fear hit me, like something's watching me and something's wrong. To the point to where, like literally, I'm not doing anything, and I'm looking at my phone, not thinking about anything, and then boom, it would happen. And so I would stand up, and I would walk because on both sides of the wall I'm sitting in front of, we have dark spaces where there's no lights, and it's L shape. So it's literally like a dark hole, and I'm facing east, which is the pasture.
Mm-hmm.
On the right side of me, we have a dog pinned up there, and this dog would bark crazy at anything. So I'd get up, and I'd peek around the left side, which is pitch black, and I would take my phone and shine the light as best I could. I'd go and do it on the right side. Well, several times the dog would be laying down, and she would be looking behind the shop, which is to the south, and she would look at me, and her ears would come up, and she'd look over there, and she'd lay her ears back. And she'd look at me, her ears would come up, and she'd look over, and I'm like, well, there's nothing over there, because she would be barking, but why is she doing that? It's like she's like, do you see this? And so this happened several times to a point where I stopped sitting outside when I got home. I would sit in the vehicle, smoke my cigarettes, and walk inside. Well,
yeah, it sounds like that could make you a little bit paranoid after a while. Like, what the hell does a dog keep looking at? I'm getting creeped out here.
Well, see, I thought I was just being a sissy. I thought I was just scaring myself. It would... But I never thought of Bigfoot or anything like that. I thought there's a person over here, or there's a mountain lion out in the tall grass or something. But the weird thing is I would not be thinking about anything, and then boom, it's like the feeling would just hit me. So my nephew, I'm very close to him. He's like a son to me, and it's not uncommon for me to wake up in the middle of the night. But what is uncommon is for me to wake up in the middle of the night and be wide awake. Like something woke me up, but I don't know what it is. I'll wake up, if I hear something, I'll look around, see what it is, go back to sleep. But if I wake up and I'm like alert, that is very uncommon. Well, this started happening, and I would wake up and I'd be laying there, and I'm like, okay, what woke me up? And then I would hear the cat, which is in my stepbrother's room. It's the room to the left of me, dash across the room and come to the wall that my room shared with his room and get behind the bookshelf and start meowing. And this cat is the most annoying cat. It literally would, for hours, just sit there and meow real loud. Meow, meow, meow. I hated this cat. And so this happens the first night. I'm like, oh, this stupid cat. It did something and woke me up. Happens the second night. Same thing. I think that the cat knocked something over. It wakes me up, and I'm waking up alert, and then it's running underneath. Well, I started catching on to one night I heard and this is like every night for a week. This happened every night. And so it was either the second or the third night. I don't remember exactly, but I wake up, nothing's moving, and I hear a pop. And then the cat scurries behind the bookshelf and does the meowing thing. And the pop was like when the house creaks and it pops, it's like a muffled pop. This was like a light pop, like something bouncing or hitting. So the next night, the cat sits there meowing. I'm trying to get shut up, and I go to sleep. The next night, same thing. I wake up, and this is very unusual to the point where I'm like, okay, something's wrong. What's going on? So I wake up, wide awake. I hear the pop. The cat runs and meows. And so by like the fifth night, I know every step, but I don't know what's going on. And I'm laying there, and on the other side of the wall, exactly like if I would have stuck my arm straight up, like I'm sticking them through the wall as I'm laying on my back, I would have touched whatever it was. There's a window directly to my right, but this thing was not in front of the window. It was exactly on the other side of the wall. And I heard a guy speak, and he spoke. His voice was so deep, it like bounced off the hallway wall, and it like shook the wall, like it reverberated. It was so deep, and it only said a few syllables, like a short phrase, and it was just a real short phrase. And I jumped up because this bed, it creaks. But anyways, I jumped up, I grabbed my phone, and I called my mom. And she's in the other room, and as it's ringing, I'm like, oh, she's not going to pick up. What am I going to do? She answers on the third ring, and she goes, what's wrong? And I said, basically, get my stepdad up. There's people in the house. So I knew no one was in the house. But my biggest fear was that people broke into the house. So in my mind, the biggest threat was somebody being in the house. So I wanted to clear that first. So I told her that's what happened, or that's what I think. That way, one, I'd be taken serious, and two, we could clear the house first. But I knew whatever it was outside the wall. But hearing it reverberate off the wall, again, that was my biggest threat. So I'm like, get him up, tell him to get his gun. He gets his gun. We end up looking. He said, where are they? And I said, I don't know. I think they're in the house, but they could be outside or something. And we end up going outside. I run outside first because I'm wanting to catch this guy. My stepdad's in his underwear, and he's got a pistol, and he goes to get a flashlight. And I go out there, and the dome light on my mom's car is on. But other than that, nothing. So we go back in, we get my nephew and my mom. Well, my mom actually went and got him and went back to her room while we were outside. We all got in the car, drove around and looked, because we're like, if somebody's here, they got to have their car close, or else they ran through the woods or across the field. And if they did, like if they brought a four-wheeler, we're going to be able to see that. If they ran through the tall grass, we're going to be able to see it. So we drove around. We went to all the gravel roads surrounding our property. There was absolutely nothing. They believed me that I heard something was out there, but we thought it was people. They asked me what I heard. I told them. I said it sounded like a big drunk guy. Because it was so deep, I knew this guy had to be huge, and it sounded like English, but I couldn't make it out, and it was it was right on the other side of the wall. So where I was laying, if I stuck my hand straight forward like I'm trying to touch the ceiling, that's about where its head was on the other side of the wall. And we have like the footings of the concrete footings is probably 3 foot tall right there. So later, going outside and looking where it had to have been standing, this thing was big. It was at least 8 foot tall, if not 9, to be where I thought its head was when I heard the sound, which of course was odd. But they didn't really think anything was really going on. We had something bang on the wall. They had heard that several times. So I end up moving out. I'm trying to think. I hope I don't leave anything out. I might, but I end up moving out. I come back, and my grandfather was sick. I think my grandfather was sick, but I came back, visited him, and it was deer season the following year, and I wanted to go hunting, and that's on this property, and nobody had ever hunted that property before. My stepbrother went out like one time, didn't see nothing. They never hunted it again. So my cousin, I took him with me, and it was late. Like it was almost dark. I got back from visiting my grandpa, threw my clothes on. My cousin came over. We're getting dressed, and we're trying to get out there before it gets pitch black. But honestly, didn't expect to see anything. We walk out the doors, and the sun is like setting already. So by the time we would have gotten to the woods, we maybe would have had 15 to 30 minutes of light tops. So we walk out the door. We're heading down that path where I saw that thing. I'm walking down that path. I'm literally within 100 yards of the door to the house. I shoot this deer. My cousin's with me. I gut it, and I shoot it. We have to drag it over. Everybody comes out and looks at it, take a couple pictures of my nephew, drag it back to the spot, and everyone goes in except my cousin, and I start gutting it. Well, I get guts out, and I hit the deer in the back of the heart, which filled its chest cavity, from the diaphragm up with blood, but the guts were clean. Pull it out. The heart's my favorite part of the meat. Sorry if I gross people out, but I have the guts out. I flip the deer over to drain the blood out of the chest cavity because I nicked him in the back of the heart, and so it filled, his chest cavity with blood. I pull all that out, and then I want to go inside to get a sharper knife to put the heart up, and then to bring my truck and my cousin's car down there because it's dark, to put the lights on it so I can finish splitting the pelvis and doing all that. So I pull the deer right by the gut pile, and I flip them over chest down to drain the blood out. Me and my cousin go in. I believe I took a bowl, put salt in it, filled it with water, put the heart in there, put it in the fridge, and grabbed a sharper knife, and we went back outside. I got in my truck. He got in his car. We drove down there. First thing we did was drag the deer over to where our headlights were hitting it, which was like right on the edge of the path. We had it back in kind of the corner right behind the semi-trailer, in the taller grass, because that's where my stepdad told me to put it. That way, there wasn't a gut pile sitting in the middle of his pathway. And so
right.
drug it over, and we're splitting it. And I cut the male part off of the deer, and I give it to my cousin to go throw in the gut pile. And I ended up cracking a joke about it, but he walks over there, and I'm trying to split the pelvis, and the leg keeps flopping over, and it's being a pain in the butt. And so I need my cousin's help. And so I look up, and he's just standing there. And I'm like, hey, man, you want to take that thing home? You want some alone time with it or something? Like just joshing him. And he's like, Dustin, where's the gut pile? And I'm like, I'm thinking, you idiot. Like, come on. Dude, it's right there. Just, will you throw that down there and come over here and help me? And he's like, Dustin, No, it's not. And so I'm agitated. I get up and I walk over there expecting to point at this huge gut pile. And when I get over there, the gut pile's gone. The only thing that's there is the puddle of blood on the ground from me draining its chest cavity. And it wasn't like a puddle, it's like a circle. It takes some sort of circular shape, you know.
Right.
It was like a crescent moon because the gut pile was on the ground first, and then I drained the blood out, and it ran up to the gut pile, the edge of the gut pile, and formed a shape around it. And now that the gut pile's gone, that shape is starting to seep in and fill in with blood. Like, it was obviously, that is 100% where the gut pile was, and it is not there. And my cousin's like, Dustin, what could have done that? And I'm like, dude, it was nothing. Just help me load this up and let's go. And we loaded up the deer, threw it in the back of my truck, and took it to my cousins, or my uncles. And I ended up going back that evening, and I took a light, and I started doing circles. I'd do a circle, and I'd take a big step out, and do a circle, take a big step out. Because I thought, okay, this place is completely surrounded by that 4 or 5 wire barbed wire fence. So I'm thinking, one, we were not gone 10 minutes. Now, I mean, no way. It's literally like 70 steps to the front door. You know, it's probably 70 to 100 yards from the door, maybe even closer. I'm trying to guess on the safe side. And we walked in. We weren't gone any more than 10 minutes. If coyotes or any animal wouldn't have done it and eaten it there, coyotes would have drug it and shredded it. You know, a bear, if it would have eaten it there, I mean, it still would have been messy. It wouldn't have been clean. So I'm thinking if something took it and drug it off, it would have had to drug it to the fence, cross the fence, and then pulled it under the fence. And I'm like, that's where, you know, as I'm doing these circles, I'm like, okay, well, I know if I don't find something before when I get to the fence, that's where I'm going to see where it took this off at.
Right.
There was absolutely not a single, and this was on yellow grass, and blood sticks out on yellow grass. There was absolutely not a drop of blood, not a shred of meat, not an intestine, not a piece of liver, not a single thing. And it blew my mind. And all of a sudden, everything, what I had seen, and all the experiences around the property came flooding back, and it started to make sense. I was like, there's nothing else that could have done this. If it was people, you know, this was the biggest buck of my life at that time. They would have taken the buck, which was laying right there.
Yeah,
people
they
don't
wouldn't
want
take that pile.
Exactly. People don't want that. And maybe the liver, but outside of that, no. And 2 men couldn't carry off a gut pile without dragging some of it, or having a wheelbarrow or a truck. And when we walked out, I closed the gate. So I know for a fact no vehicles went down there, and it was completely surrounded by a fence, and there was nothing. I mean, if a bear did it, it would have had to drug it off or eaten it all. If it would have eaten it all, we would have either seen it or seen some trace. Coyotes would have ripped it to pieces. It would have looked like a murder scene. A mountain lion wouldn't have been able to eat it all. And if it drug it off, I mean, there would just be so much evidence. And the direction that it would have had, like the fence was right there pretty close to us. And you got the gut pile, and then the blood puddle was in between the gut pile and the fence. So if something drug it on the ground and took it to the fence, which was right there, it would have drug it through the blood and the yellow grass. I mean, it just would have been obvious, and there was just no way to explain how that happened. And I knew I wasn't crazy because my cousin's the one that saw it, and I just confirmed it.
Right, and you're almost thinking like you need some kind of an animal that's like a vacuum cleaner that can like just wet back up this whole pile of guts and then can like step over a 6-strand barbed wire fence and walk right off and leave no trace. Oh, what the hell falls into that category?
Exactly. Nothing, absolutely nothing made sense. And, my cousin kept asking me, Dustin, what could have done that? What could have done that? And one, I was scared, but, that day I was kind of teaching him about deer hunting, and I didn't want him to freak out because I was freaked out, so I just didn't want to talk about it. I was like, dude, it was nothing. It was nothing. Or I may have even said coyotes ate it or something, but he knew it didn't make sense. And it's kind of funny because after that, he just filed it away in his mind and forgot about it until I decided to tell my family what I believe what's going on out there and what I saw. And he was like, oh, Dustin, you didn't see that. This was much later. But he's like, you didn't see that. You didn't see that. And I was like, dude, do you remember the gut pile? And his jaw dropped. And he was like, holy crap, you're right. But before I brought that up, he had forgotten about it, and he wasn't believing me until I said that.
Yeah.
But
and then all of a sudden, whoops, you slapped him with evidence, and that woke him right up.
Oh, yeah. And he ended up having another experience out there. But after the gut pile, I dove into this, started looking into it, and trying to figure out what was going on out there. I had, told my family everything that I had seen and that I experienced and what I believed was out there. And, of course, when it comes to advice for hunting or the woods, I'm one of the guys in my family that people come to and ask questions,
right.
But yet when I say I saw this, they all think I misidentified it or something, That's when I started dealing with the issues of the fear, and I stopped hunting, and I would quote unquote hunt, but I would go and I would sit in the middle of an open field, right by the house. I would like technically hunt to kind of save face, but at the same time I was so scared. And
you got your floodlights, your barbed wire fence, your minefield, your salt lick,
exactly. And I completely stopped squirrel hunting, which is my favorite type of hunting and favorite game meat. Deer hunting, I think I just did to save face. I didn't actually hunt, and there was, of course, my mom and stepdad didn't believe what was going on, and they had experienced the banging and, me jumping up saying, hey, somebody's talking outside, all that stuff. And they didn't believe me. And one night I was warming up noodles, and I was in the microwave, and it was hot. And my mom had the kitchen door open, which leads into the garage. And it's just me, her, and my nephew there. Well, she's getting him ready for a bath. He's just about to get in the bath. And I'm warming these up, and I'm talking on my cell phone to my dad. And we have an island, and I'm walking around it in the kitchen as I'm talking. And I warm up the noodles, winding up overcooking them, and I was like upset because I overcooked them. I put the juice in, and I put them back in. And I'm walking around, and I just passed in front of the doorway, and I hear a man speak out in the garage. So I think, oh, my stepdad's home, and he's on the phone. So I go ahead and finish my lap around, and when I come back, I step in the doorway, and I peek my head out 100% expecting to see my stepdad there. And just as my face gets through the doorway, this thing speaks again. And I literally, drop down, and I made my hands into fists, and I put them up by my head, and I dropped down, almost in the fetal position. That's how bad it scared me, and it was so deep. It's like I could feel it when it spoke. And I dropped down, and I backed up, and I don't remember either. I slammed the door then or I did it later. And I'm like, Mom. I get my pistol. I go in the back, and I get my stepdad's pistol. And I'm like, Mom, get Jason, put him in your bathroom. Come on, just do it. And she's like, oh, Dustin. I'm like, do it, like screaming at her. And she doesn't. She's like, you're just freaking out. And me and her standing in front of the fridge, and I'm like explaining what happened, and I don't feel comfortable staying there, so I grabbed her. I'm like, come here, and we step on the other side of the fridge, and I'm explaining to her what I heard, and she's like, well, maybe it was Dave out there, or, yeah, and where we're standing goes into the living room. Well, directly across from where we're standing is the back patio door, and it has a large glass piece in the middle of it. And this thing moved over to there, and it spoke again. And my mom heard it. And she's like, who was that? And so I grab her, and I move back to the other side of the fridge where it can't see us. And I'm like, do you see? And she's like, who's out there? Like, she started freaking because she knew it wasn't my stepdad, and she knew she heard it. This thing.
Now, what did she think it was? Jabba the Hutt out there in the garage or something, going,
Chewbacca, she's like, is he out there? I'm like, Mom, you better call him, because if it is, he's about to get shot. Like, I'm on the edge. If something tries to get in, it's getting shot. So she calls him. He's in the grocery store in town. He drops everything, jumps in his truck, and flies home. Now, of course, finds nothing when he gets there, but it wasn't him. Nobody was there. In the kitchen, the windows faced the driveway, so if somebody would have pulled down, we would have seen it and heard it. And this thing spoke 3 times, and it said the same thing 3 times. And I asked my mom, I said, Mom, what did you hear? And she's like, I heard a guy speak. I'm like, no, what did you hear? What did it say? And she goes, well, I don't know. I said, how many syllables? And she's like, 2. I said, what letter did they sound like? Because I already knew in my head, but I wanted to confirm. She said, it sounded like it started with a D both times. And I'm like, yes, that's what I heard. And what it sounded like it said was drob, drew, or drob, droop. I don't know. It was more like drob, drew. Drob, drew. And it said the same thing the first 2 times I heard it, and the last time when my mom heard it, the 3rd time when my mom heard it with me. And she's heard that at another time. We were talking, and I think this was before this happened, but we were talking about it, and she, of course, didn't believe me, and she's like, well, if it's out there, then let's go out there and look. And I'm like, Mom, you can't just do that. And she's like, well, why not? And I'm like, fine. So we go outside. I have a flashlight on my pistol, which is an LED light, and we start shining it, and 100% did not believe we'd see anything, and then boom, there's these 2 eyes that are about 7-8 inches apart. They're huge, and they are just above the grass over on the other side of the driveway, but they look far away. And what I figured out later is whatever this was standing down the holler, but it was just above the grass. So as you're looking at the tall grass, it looks like it's right there, but it looked far away, and that's what it was doing. Something was standing down the hillside to where just its head was sticking above the grass. And we shine the light on it, and she's like, what is that? And I'm like, Mom, what does that look like to you? She goes, I don't know. Is it a horse? I'm like, Mom, are there horses over there? Of course there isn't. And we're standing there, it's not moving. And my mom's like, well, what is it? I'm like, what color eye shine do you see? And she's like, I can't remember. But she was like, it's blue. And I'm like, no, it's white. The eye shines, or I said it's green. That's right. It's green. And so we're arguing. She's like, it's blue. I'm like, Mom, it is green. But yes, those are what I'm seeing too. She's like, Dustin, it's blue. And so I keep my hand the same and I lean over and I can see it's blue. And then I lean back to where I was originally standing and it is definitely green. And I'm like, Mom, lean over, look at this. You're right, but it's changing. And she leans over and she sees it. Well, she's like, why isn't it moving? And I'm like, I don't know. And she does the one thing, she knows nothing about this. She does the one thing you're not supposed to do. And she goes, whoop.
Oh, God.
Just like that. She whoops at it. But I knew what she was trying to do. And I was like, Mom, what are you doing? She goes, I'm just trying to get it to move. Like she just made a noise, and that was the first one that came to her head to get it to move. And it did. It started looking to its right and back at us. And to its right and back at us. And over to its right is where all this stuff has happened. And she's looking to the right and back at us, and it's looking back and forth. And I don't know if it put its arm up at one point because it's like you could see the eyes, but it's like there was something in front of it, or maybe it grabbed a branch and it was brush. I don't know. But we stood there and stared at this thing and for probably 3 to 5 minutes. And eventually we're just like, do you think we should go in? Yeah, let's go in before it does something. But it just kept looking over to the right and looking back at us. Real quick, the previous encounter, when it was talking outside the garage, there's a window right there. And in that space, that little nook is where the dog used to be. My stepbrother ended up coming and getting the dog. But that's one of the dark spots. There's no light there. Like it's pitch black right there. The light on the end of the garage doesn't shine over there, and the light on the patio doesn't shine over there, even though the light on the patio was off. But you can see, because I had that door open, I think it was watching me do my laps. And it spoke, and then I walked around and poked my head out. It spoke again. There's a window there. And then standing back there with my mom, it moved to the back patio and spoke there as well. So I just wanted to clarify that. But,
God, I wonder what it was saying. You know, that's just really bizarre. Makes you wonder what it was thinking and what it was saying, you know. And probably wasn't hug the Wookiee or something, but just, you know, kind of curious.
But at the same time, it's like, because, you know, my name, I thought, well, is it trying to say my name? Well, no, that's way too short. You know, my nephew used to call me Dutton, Uncle Dutton, and I thought maybe that. But the thing is it's like each time it said it slower and more drawn out. Like the first time was real quick, the second time was a little bit longer, and the third time was a little bit longer than that. And that I've thought about that just as much as my sighting. And I just wonder, was it trying to communicate with me? Was it just trying to scare me? Because obviously when I jumped and I jerked, like I dropped down to where almost my butt was touching the ground, like all the way down. I kind of went in the fetal position, but I had my fists up by my head. And whenever it spoke, when I poked my head out because it scared me so bad, like it knew it scared me. And then it went to the back patio door and spoke again. So was it just having fun with me? Like it enjoyed scaring me? Because it seemed like once I saw them, like they focused on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, you know, there's a couple other things that happened out there. There's a lot of little stuff, but, you know, one time it squealed like a pig at me. I was walking inside, and it did it, and then I ended up leaving my juice out in the car, went out to get it, came back, and I stopped in the doorway, and I was about to shine my light over there, and it did it again. Exact same scream, squeal. It sounded like a pig. And then another time putting up a deer stand for my stepbrother. There was 4 of us. We had a truck going. It ended up getting pitch black, and I hear this thing walking around. It starts behind us, and it sounds like it goes around the pond, but I'm standing right next to an ejected 350 that's running. So I think because I'm scared, you know, and I told them, I'm like, hey, dude, I turned into a pumpkin at dark, so let's hurry up and get this out of here. Like, come on, let's get this up. You guys know how I am. I had my pistol, and this thing's walking around, and it sounds like it's just obviously breaking branches, but it sounds like it's on 2 feet, and it's dark, and I hear it walking around, and, you know, it's like every couple seconds I'm hearing it, and it slowly makes its way around, but it was very loud, and then it gets up to where it's at like my 10 o'clock, and it's still just walking. It gets to like my 11 o'clock, if, you know, the tree that my stepbrother's hanging the stand, he's up in the stand, wrapping a chain around. My stepdad is on the other side up a ladder. My buddy, TJ, is standing right in front of me because we helped them get it up. But once they got it up, you can kind of only have 2 guys there. And I was the one in the truck because we used a rope we hooked it to the truck. And anyways, TJ standing right in front of me, and I'm the closest to the truck. Well, the whole time I'm telling myself I'm hearing stuff until it gets up to where it's past my 9 o'clock, because now it's in front of me and it's much closer and it's still circling around. Well, it gets to the 11 o'clock position, and the footsteps go from being very loud and obvious crunch, snap, crunch, like just breaking stuff, and it goes like it sounds like it's pitter-pattering, and it's no longer going around. It literally is on the other side of this huge oak tree, and it's coming straight at us, and it's going and it's like it's intentionally trying to be quiet, and it's moving short distances and stopping. Well, in my head, I'm like, okay. I pull my pistol out. It's already cocked. And I'm like, these guys, if I tell them I hear something, they already know I'm the crazy guy that saw Bigfoot. So I'm not saying anything. And when this thing pokes its head out, I'm shooting it in the face, and they're going to learn real quick something's wrong and that I'm not playing games. So either they're going to get in the truck or I'm going to leave them here. But I'm not saying a word until I fire this gun. And so my buddy had a little keychain flashlight, and I'm like, dude, give me that. And I'm shining the light on this tree because it's on the other side of it. And, you know, I'm kind of sweeping left and right, seeing if it's going to poke its head out. And it comes up, and it's literally right on the other side of this tree to the point where I don't know why I can't see it. Like, it's right there. And I'm shaking. I have the pistol aimed. I have my hand underneath my wrist that's holding the pistol, shining the light on it. I have my finger on the trigger, and I am ready to start. I was already starting to take up slack just to get ready. And my stepbrother, who's up in the tree, goes, guys, there's something big, and it's coming right at us. And I'm like, this relief, because he was hearing it come straight towards us. He didn't hear it at all before until it started doing the little pitter-patter, stop-and-go stuff straight at us. And my stepdad goes, no, where? And he's like, right where Dustin's shining that light. And I'm like, yep. And it circled around, and it's right on the other side of this tree. He gets a spotlight. He starts shining it, and I tell my stepbrother, I'm like, dude, it's time to go. He's like, well, I'm almost done. I got to finish this light. I'm like, it's time to leave now. And he's like, all right. He finishes it. He gets down. They all get in the truck. I'm the last one in the truck because I won't take my light and my gun off this tree. We get in the truck, and we leave. And of course, everybody's like, what was that? My stepbrother said, I'm like, what did it sound like? He's like, it sounded like something big. I'm like, was it on 2 legs or 4? And he's like, it sounded like it was on 2, but it was moving them quick, and it was like moving and stopping. And so I end up asking, of course, they all ended up just chalking it up to nothing. But the next day, I run into one of their family members that owns the pasture that connects with this one, and I asked him, I'm like, hey, did, my stepdad tell you, what happened the other night? He's like, well, no. I'm like, have you ever noticed anything weird out here? And he's like, oh, yeah, he did. And, it's funny because that was nothing but white-tailed deer. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yep, that was a white-tailed deer. I'm like, what do you mean? And he said, if you pull out into the pasture, and I've done this, and it's nighttime, and you shut the truck off, you shut the lights off, and you roll down the windows, and you just sit there, you'll hear the deer. They won't do it every time, but if you sit there long enough, the deer will sneak up on you, and you'll hear them coming up in the grass. And then you turn on the truck and turn around and shine your lights around, but you'll never see them. But, yep, it's white-tailed deer. And I'm just like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Like, I can poke holes through that because that absolutely makes zero sense. Yeah. But all right, white-tailed deer like coming up to pick up trucks. Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, and sneaking up on you too. Yeah, they like to do that a lot. Deer are known for their sneaky predatory behavior. Exactly,
and when you spin your truck around, there's no eye shine, and that's another thing. When this thing moved up on us, if it was a deer or a coyote or a dog, we would have seen eye shine, and it wouldn't have, there was a big bush, and the tree was right there. But behind that, it was clear. There's a clear spot, and that's the path it took to get down there. But we should have seen something. And a deer are not going to walk up on four guys with a running truck and lights putting this up. I honestly think it was one of these creatures, and it was curious as what we were doing.
Yeah.
I wish at the time I had a recorder because I remember thinking when we left, man, I wish I had a recorder because I guarantee that thing's going to check out that deer stand. I knew what it was, and the whole time I'm having this mental battle saying, no, Dustin, you're just hearing stuff. You're just scared and you're hearing stuff because I'm hearing this breaking and this crunching in between the cackle of this injected 350 that's running right next to me. And, as it gets around, it gets louder and more obvious until it's no more denying it, and I can't fight it in my head anymore. I know something's there.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a lot of things on this property, and they still... Some of them choose to remain just ignorant to it and chalk everything up to nothing. No, it's nothing. It was white-tailed deer coming up on four guys in the truck and, a spotlight.
Yeah, the white-tailed deer run on their hind legs and raid your dumpster and leave 18-inch long tracks, and I'm sure they do. That's it gets to the point sometimes where the mental gymnastics they're performing trying to convince themselves that it's something else is way more ridiculous than the concept that it could have been Bigfoot.
Absolutely.
So, it's just one of those things that always boggles my mind. Well, unless you got more that you want to cover and go into, I think we should wrap her up at this point. And I'd like to remind everybody that you've got a really good show that you do called CRYPTO P.T.S.D., and they should not only go and check it out and listen to them because they're great and entertaining episodes, but if anybody out there that's listening to this show has had an encounter, and it doesn't have to be one where you're chased by, a 12-foot tall flaming Bigfoot shooting lightning out of its mouth trying to barbecue you. It can be any kind of a cryptid, related encounter. And Dustin does cryptid encounters besides Bigfoot. He does dogman encounters and stuff too. And he's just looking for guests to come on his show right now. And I just think it's great that there's another show out there that's providing this kind of outlet for people to come on and talk about these experiences with somebody that's the host has actually had some of these experiences so they can relate to it. And, God bless you. I just am happy that there's more shows like this out there to give people more of a venue, different places that they can go to share with. But, I definitely recommend Dustin's show. Is a good show, and I also recommend that if you've had an encounter, if you've seen something and you want to share it with an audience, and if you want to talk to someone else who's had those sort of experiences, definitely get a hold of Dustin, CryptoPTSD at gmail.com. This is the email. Got that correct, right?
Yes. Yep.
And anything else you wanted to add there, buddy?
No, just Duke, thank you. Thank you for helping me out. We did the interview on my show, and then ever since then, anytime I have a problem, I call you, and you either always answer, you always get back to me. That means a lot, man. And then when it comes to the show, it's CRYPTO P.T.S.D, and we're on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you've had an encounter, I do paranormal. I've also had experiences with that, and it's once your mind gets open to this stuff and you realize that these things are real, so many other people deal with this. And I don't just take encounters where people suffer. I think we all suffer in some way when you have an experience with something that's not supposed to be real. But I take encounters from, like you said, Dogman, Bigfoot, paranormal, UFO, whatever. If you had an unexplained experience or group of experiences, or you saw something that's not supposed to exist, please send me an email and put encounter in the subject line. Well, other than that, Duke, I really appreciate it. You've helped me out a lot. Got a lot of things coming down the pipeline, and I hope to get to meet you soon. I've got Kerry with Bigfoot Odyssey. He's going to be doing a web series, and he's going to come down and do my encounter and do a show on my show. And I'd love to hook him up with you. And he wants to meet everybody, but man, you're a great guy. All you hear about is the bad crap and the bad people in the Bigfoot community. But I got lucky, and I got in contact with you, and I'm happy that I'm in a group of people that want to help each other and ask for nothing in return. So, Duke, thank you.
You're very, very welcome, buddy. And again, I'd like to encourage everyone because, with my show, I do really open format. So if you call me with an encounter, I'll talk to you about it, but it may never get on the show, or it may be a long, long time before it gets on the show. If you actually want to get it out to the public or something, I really encourage you to go talk to Dustin at CRYPTO P.T.S.D. Unless you've seen a troll or a wendigo, then come talk to me. But other than that, Dustin will be happy to take your encounter. And he's even got two kinds of really cool artwork that he's using now. He's got one that's got like a Bigfoot on it, and one that's got like a Bigfoot facing off against a Dogman that looks like they're about to attack each other, that he can use for shows other than just plain Bigfoot. So you can even sort of tell what the show is going to be about just by looking at the artwork on it. And I want you to see the artwork of the next scene after that, where they're actually fighting each other, and like Bigfoot has ripped off one of Dogman's arms and is beating him over the head with it. That's the next one I want to see from you.
I'll have to make the Dogman win in just because you said that.
My money's on Bigfoot all the way. He can throw boulders. Dogman ain't no good at that. All right, brother. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the show. And, again, everybody, go check out CRYPTO P.T.S.D. It's a great show. I really enjoy it. And I hope you enjoyed listening to Dustin's Encounters. And I'm sure you'll enjoy his show, too. So go check it out. And otherwise, everybody have a great week. And we'll see you on the next show. Take care, everyone. God bless.